is inside the trial and has been tracking this on a daily basis. And she wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago about how Cassie Ventura's testimony might have damned the prosecution's case because in a lot of instances, she was a willing participant in the freak-offs, and they had to prove essentially that the domestic abuse that she was allegedly experiencing from Diddy had caused her to be coerced into participating. But there are text messages and moments in her testimony where she provided enthusiastic consent. A couple of examples. After she claimed that Diddy raped her on her living room floor after they had broken up, she later had consensual sex with him. She admitted to consenting to some of the freak-offs, writing in a text message in 2009, "I'm always ready to freak off," and then she replied to Diddy's enthusiastic response saying, "I just want it to be uncontrollable. Wish we could have FO'd before you left, and I love our FOs when we both want it." Obviously not discounting the fact that she was a victim probably in a lot of ways, but when those texts are read aloud in a courtroom, when you're trying to prove that she was coerced into engaging in this sex trafficking ring, that's going to be problematic for a jury.
Yeah, problematic, I think, is the right word. I mean, I think that it is a morally and legally complicated matter whenever there is obvious evidence of someone being abused, as was the case in that video that I mentioned, and at the same time you have texts of the kind that you just mentioned. And so the question then becomes, to a degree, one of interpretation. In other words, do you think, as a juror, I don't mean you individually, but do jurors think, well, that person is voicing consent because they are scared, because they are being coerced, because they are fearful of more abuse, or are they consenting because they're consenting? And that is I think, a hard thing to decode in these kinds of cases, and may well have weighed against a conviction on some of the more serious of these charges.
Yeah, I think that's right. The prosecution also, in the last minute of the trial, had to pull back testimony related to an alleged car bombing of Kid Cudi, the rapper's car, because they were never able to directly link Diddy to that action. So another issue with proving the direct line right between Diddy's allegedly threatening and violent behavior with the prostitution and alleged sex trafficking. Cassie Ventura has actually released a statement in response to this verdict through her attorney. He said that this entire criminal process started when our client Cassie Ventura had the courage to file her civil complaint in November 2023. Although the jury did not find Combs guilty of sex trafficking Cassie beyond a reasonable doubt, she paved the way for a jury to find him guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. He also said, by coming forward with her experience, Cassie has left an indelible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for justice.
I mean, I have no particular problem with that statement. I think she did do something brave by coming forward. I think she was obviously abused by this man, and to speak out publicly and go forward with such a high-profile case and such a high-profile proceeding, it requires a lot of bravery in and of itself. And I would not like at all his acquittal on the more serious charges to be taken as an invalidation of what Cassie Ventura did or what she suffered in instances in their relationship. It is interesting that a lot of the contention now seems to have moved on to this issue of bail and him being denied, that his legal team were obviously very aggrieved about that, arguing that he was no flight risk or no risk to anyone else. I do think it's when someone has the financial means that he has, it becomes, I think, debatable, because obviously he does have resources if he wanted to flee that other people would not have.
Right, and Ventura's lawyers have argued that due to the history of domestic violence that he could provide some kind of retribution against her because of her willingness to testify in this case. He's looking at, according to judge guidelines, somewhere between a 4 and 5 year sentence. He also could potentially get time served, which would obviously lessen that quite considerably, but going to spend at least some time in jail. And I think, most importantly, despite this verdict being sort of a mixed bag, the public perception of Diddy has completely changed. And certainly, even to people who participated in these events, it's sort of universally agreed upon now that Diddy's a scumbag, right? Regardless of whether they were able to prove the RICO charges, this is not a good person.
Absolutely. No, agree 100% with that. Remember when Elon Musk pulled up to CPAC with a chainsaw? The billionaire is now indicating he might have some regrets about that. We'll talk about that next.